All right, so on to the new stuff. So Chapter 7 is where we take all of this percentage stuff and we start putting it in terms of business. All right? So Chapter 7 is where we're going to basically learn about discounting. All right? The idea about Chapter 7 is, imagine, if you will, you decide to run a retail shop. All right? So if you run a retail shop, this is very much so that the model of your business, okay? So when you run a retail shop, there are two standard pieces of information that you work with. Well, really three. So there's list price, net price, and your trade discount amount. So when you're running a retail shop, the idea is that you have some sort of a wholesaler or a manufacturer that you are going to get into a relationship with. And they're going to say, look, we're going to make all of your supplies, and we're going to tell you what price to sell them at. You are going to buy them for that price, because that's what we've set the suggested retail price at. And what we'll do, because we have set up a relationship, is give you a discount amount on that price. The idea is that you are going to get the product, whatever it is, sell it for whatever they're telling you the price should be. So think of this as the manufacturer's suggested retail price. So a lot of times when you get into a retail business, the person who you're selling, who's actually making the stuff you're selling, they'll tell you what the price is. That's the way retail shops work more often than not. All right? Now, you can have discounts on your goods if you want, but that's usually your own business's relationship. We're not going to get into that, okay? All we're talking about is the wholesaler-retailer relationship. That's it, okay? So the list price is the manufacturer's suggested retail price. The net price is what you really pay for your goods, okay? Again, remember that you are the owner of this business, okay? So when you are buying these things from someone else, you're not getting them. What you're doing is getting raw materials so that you can then sell them to someone else, okay? The problem with students a lot of times is they tend to look at this and think, well, if I'm buying something, I should be getting something out of the deal, and stop yourself, okay? You're a business owner. That's your concept behind this, all right? Trade discount amount, folks. Is just the difference between the list price and the net price. So again, let's review how this business works, right? The list price, this is what you're going to sell your goods at, okay? And technically, this is also what you're going to pay for them. If you're running a business and you buy something at a certain price and sell it at the same price, how much profit do you make? How many businesses exist like that? Okay, good. All right, so realize that the whole point of this is that they're just setting up this and then giving you some sort of a discount to get you down at the net price, which is what you really pay for the goods. Remember, though, but this is what you're going to sell them at.
Well, it has nothing to do with the quality, it's just like what they actually do. Like they offer you other items that you can sell for more that are actually cheaper, just get the eye off the higher price, make you think you get a deal on the other one that you're trying to sell.
Potentially, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's lots of games that go around in this stuff. Tons of games. But realize this is the very most basic thing where we're just dealing with one product and one product alone. All right? So if I were to ask you in terms of business, this list price, what is it in terms of business? Exactly, but now that's what it is to the wholesaler. You are the retailer, right? That's what you're going to sell it for. In other words, that's your revenue. This is how much money you're going to collect when you sell the product that you bought, right? What's the net price? Now this one is exactly what you think it is. It's your cost. It's what you actually paid for it. It's the real amount that you paid. What's the difference between revenue and cost in a business perspective? Profit or loss. So what is the trade discount amount, which is the difference between those two? That's your profit, positive or negative. All right? So these three numbers are the three numbers that drive retail businesses, right? And what really determines how much profit you make is how savvy you are at making this number, the difference between these two numbers, bigger, right? Well, that's all there is to it. Now, in general, the way it usually gets negotiated. Now, again, as David was saying, there's some twists that sometimes happen in the business world. More times than not, what your trade discount is a percentage of the list price. All right? Normally, the way you calculate your trade discount amount is a percentage of whatever you put up in front of it. And the idea here is that this is the way a lot of businesses work, right? They'll say, well, I want to make a 20% return on my investment. The idea here is that if you put out $1,000, you expect to get 20% on top of that in profit. You're expecting to make $200 out of the deal. All right? All right, so this basically sets up our problem. So now, if you think about it, so here's a little bit of algebra, and it's just pointing out what we're doing, okay? So here's how you figure out how much you pay, right? You take your list price, you subtract your discount amount, that's what you write your check for, right? Well, if I take this formula and substitute it into here, what does that formula look like? Percentage decrease. That's all it is. Chapter 7 is basically taking percentage decrease and beating it to death. Okay? So we're going to get ourselves out a big old hammer, and we're going to take the percentage decrease problem, and we're just going to beat on it business-wise. Because this is what retail shops do. All right? So when we are working on these problems, we will generally be dealing with percentage decrease problems. Now, remember that there's a 1 out in front of that list price. I'm going to do a little bit of fancy math here on you. Basically what I'm trying to do, or what I'm trying to point out to you, is an easier way to take a percentage off of something. All right? If you read that something is 20% off, you can, if you want, take 20% of your number and then subtract from that number, right? Or, if you're savvy, you will now be able to use a slightly different trick. If you have 20% off of a number, that means that you're going to pay 80% of the price. So instead of having to multiply and subtract, all you have to do is multiply once, where you take 100% minus whatever your percentage was. That's what this formula actually represents. This is what's called the complement. Okay? Whenever you're taking 100% minus a percentage, you are calculating what's called the complement of your percent. And it's just a way of calculating percentage decreases quicker. All right? So if something is 20% off, instead of taking 20% and then subtracting, you can just take 80% of your number and you're there instantly. Okay? So, this has another name. And I show it to you because there are questions on the homework that will constantly be asking you for it. I would like you to kind of get in the habit of trying to think about this. This complement of your discount is often called the net price equivalent rate. Why do you think they call it the net price equivalent rate? Because when you take this number and multiply by the list price, what do you get back to? Net price. Okay? Hence, the net price equivalent rate. All right, so that's just 7 is going to work, right? A lot of it is going to be phrased in discount terminology. Now, when you are dealing with purchasing your goods in your retail shop from your supplier, what else do you have to worry about? If you buy something for somebody, are you going to buy it from them? If you're not buying it from them face to face, what do you got to do? You got to ship it, right? So one of the other things you have to worry about are shipping costs, okay? So just, it's a part of business, deal with it, okay? And generally, shipping costs cut from your profit margin because you got to pay for it. Now, that depends on how good of a negotiator you are, though, right? I mean, if you want, you could say, hey, wait a second, I want you to give me a 20% trade discount, but I want you to pay for the shipping instead. And the person, the wholesaler may come back at you and say, well, 20% and you want me to pay the shipping? No, 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 no. Why don't I give you, say, 25% and you pay for the shipping? And then you negotiate, right? Then there's haggling going back and forth. Whichever one you think is better for you, you choose it, all right? But the fact remains is that shipping's part of the deal, right? But really, shipping is something you negotiate with the contractor when you first set up your relationship. And if you screw up the initial negotiation with your wholesaler, yeah, because that's going to stick around, right? Because you're going to write a contract, you're going to sign the contract's going to have an expiration date, and if you didn't negotiate well, tough crap, right? I mean, you have to deal with it because it's a contract, right? That you guys will take contract law and you'll learn how hard it is to get out of those kind of contracts. Anyways, all right, so there are 2 types of shipping. First off, FOB. Does anybody know what FOB stands for? Technically, it stands for freight on board. What I like to tell people is that what it really stands for is free on board, because what follows the FOB is telling you where it's free, okay? So FOB shipping point, if you see this phrase in your contract, this means that it's free when it is shipped, right? So that means that your wholesaler is putting it on the truck and not paying. So who's paying for it? We are, all right? The other one that you can get then is FOB destination. That means that it's free when it reaches where it's going. Hence, the person who bought it, shipped it. This one says that the shipper is selling it. And hence, the shipper pays the selling, or the seller pays the shipping. Strike that, reverse it. And one other very, very, very big key. Shipping is not a part of your discount rate. All right? When you negotiate this trade discount rate, 20, 25, 30%, whatever you're negotiating for, shipping is always outside of that rate, okay? It used to be in business that if you were a wholesaler, you couldn't also own a shipping industry because then there was a collusion argument that was going on. That was business law written pre-2005. Since 2005, we've had a lot of more relaxed contract negotiations and business negotiations. There are now situations where wholesalers can own a shipping company, and it's made these contract negotiations much more colluded. But for purposes in this class, shipping is not discounted, okay? So if a particular problem that's talking about the list price includes shipping, when you go to calculate discount you have to take the shipping out, calculate your discount, and then add the shipping back in at the end, because you do not get to discount your shipping, okay? And the book loves that trick. There are probably 4 or 5 questions in the book where it tells you that the shipping is included in the price, and you have to know to take the shipping out, calculate the discount, and then add the shipping back in, okay? Just be wary of that, all right? In general, I am doing that less and less the more I hear about business where business is not having this sort of separation of shipping and wholesaling. Again, it kind of depends on how the laws get rewritten, so bear with me to some degree. All right, so now that we have the basic structure, let's just do a problem. Tends to be the easiest way. All right, so what kind of a retailer should I be? What should I be selling? Shoes? Okay. So I'm a shoe retailer. I'm, Payless Shoes. I guess I am. How much you think about it? Okay, right. So I am a shoe retailer. I buy, let's say, 100 pair of shoes at a suggested retail price of $50. I get let's go with a 40% trade discount. Okay, so this is a very, 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 very simplified business contract that I have set up with my wholesaler, okay? I'm buying shoes from them, and I'm getting a trade discount of 40%. What I want you to tell me is, what's my net price? I want to know what's my trade discount amount, Sorry, start with list price, guys. Don't start with net price. Sorry. It's easy for me to erase. I know it's harder for you. My bad. So I want to know these three things now. Note that I did not include any shipping in this particular problem yet. All right, the first thing that you have to realize when you're talking about contracts is that they are going to give you a per unit price. The contract or the money values are always dealt with as a combination of all of the units put together, okay? So the suggested retail price of $50 is not the list price, okay? If I only bought one pair of shoes, then yes, it would be $50, okay? But I bought 100 pair of shoes, so technically, what is my list price? $5,000, right? I bought 100 pairs of shoes at $50 a pop. I'm going to have to, in theory, pay $5,000 for these shoes. Again, remember that the list price is your revenue, right? When you sell all 100 pairs of these shoes at $50 a pair, you will have $5,000 in your till. How much am I going to actually save? What is my trade discount amount? 40% of whatever the list price is. Okay, so the trade discount amount is just the percentage off of your money, right? So my trade discount amount is $2,000. How much do I actually write a check for this shipment? Take the difference of the two, $3,000. Very standard contract, no shipping involved, right? The guy is actually right next door to you. You're selling the shoes and the warehouse it just happens to be right behind you, right? So there's no shipping. You just walk over there, you grab the box of 100 shoes, you give them a $3,000 check, and you walk back across the street, right? I mean, that could happen, right? I mean, there's places where the manufacturer and the seller are literally across the street from each other, right? It's rare, but it does happen. Nice part about that, there's no shipping. That's a good thing, right? You would love it if you run a retail shop and your manufacturer was across the street, because negotiating for shipping sucks, all right? So that's a very classic problem. Please note that's how you go about doing it, all right? So let's do one more, and then we'll call it a day. This time I will include some shipping. All right, so should we stay with shoes? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So I buy, let's go with 200 shoes, and of course I'm talking about 200 pairs of shoes. I'm not talking 200 shoes, one right, one left, anything like that, right? So I buy 200 shoes at, let's suppose, $100 a pair. I also have to pay $200 shipping. If I get a, let's say I got a 45% trade discount, now give me the standard list price, trade discount amount, net price. That's the suggested retail price, exactly. All right, so 200 pairs of shoes at $100 a pair. What was my list price? Try it again. $20,000. Now, should you add the shipping in there? No. My advice is not to. Some retailers and wholesalers, they will actually add the shipping in as a cost. All right, but then they're just sneaky. When they go to calculate the trade discount amount, they will only calculate the trade discount amount off of the list price with the shipping. So for all intents and purposes in this class, I would prefer you tell me it's $20,000, but if you put the $200 in there, I won't mark you wrong, okay? Because in theory, it's a cost, and so you may want to write it in as the list price. The key, though, is remembering that when you go to calculate the trade discount amount, it's 45% of the list price without the shipping if you added it in there. So what's my trade discount amount? $9,000. And what's my net price? How much of a check am I going to write for this guy? $11,200, right? Don't forget the shipping on the net price, right? So it's $11,000 in net price plus the fact that you're going to have to pay the shipping. Inside of the actual cost for this, because for whatever reason it was FOB shipping point, the seller didn't have to pay for the shipping, it came after the fact. For Chapter 6? Yeah. All right, so realize that on Wednesday we will start talking about something called chain discounts. Chain discounts are sort of like getting multiple percentages off on a particular purchase, i.e. the whole Kohl's experiment where you go to the store and it says this rack is 40% off and you have the Kohl's 30% coupon. How do you get 40% off and then 30% off after that? All right, that's known as a chain discount. We'll get to that on Wednesday. Joe? Thanks.